we have this thing that we see in converts we call convertitis. You can stand up for what is right and what the rights that Allah has given women. Unrelenting Twitter abuse. It was because I was a woman and because I was a Muslim. I will keep trying, and when I stop trying, that's when I know there's a problem.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you all. Welcome to another Safi Bros podcast. We are here today with an inspirational episode of the Safi Bros podcast, where we bring you a remarkable journey through life challenges and also achievements. Today, we are truly honored to have a distinguished sister of ours, a scholar, an author, an advocate, whose journey is nothing short of inspiring, especially to me. Jazakallah khair. She's a voice that resonates across diverse platforms, mashallah, shedding light of important issues, mashallah, that she has, and so many issues that she's spoken about, and she's promoted the positive change within our community. Jazakumullah khair. I would love to welcome dear sister, Dr. Susan Carland.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me.
Welcome. We are so honored.
Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited. I feel like I've made it when I'm on the Sacred Brothers podcast.
So today, alhamdulillah, we've got you here to share your success story. Inshallah, a inspiring story that will inspire our sisters and brothers, inshallah, to do more and to see more, and inshallah to see your trials and tribulations and your high points, inshallah, within what you've done, and inshallah they can see themselves through you in this story, inshallah. So I'd like to welcome you to the Safi Bros podcast.
Thank you.
I think we'd first like to know about your family. How many brothers, sisters, where you grew up?
Yeah.
Start us there.
I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne, or out in Nunawading.
Wow.
Right out there.
Not many Muslims there.
No, there were not. Actually, yeah, it's funny now that you say that. I don't think I met a Muslim until I was in high school.
Wow.
So, yeah, definitely there were not many Muslims out there.
We do Warrandyte. We do know one. We used to do events there. And there's not many Muslims there. But very honest. They used to give us $50 notes, and they were very honest there. I remember, subhanAllah.
They're my people. So yeah, I grew up out in Nunawading. I have one older brother. So obviously in the Muslim community, that's a small family, obviously.
Very.
And I grew up out there. Pretty unremarkable childhood. My parents got divorced when I was about 7. And then
Which school?
I went to Nunawading South Primary School. Okay. And then when my parents got divorced, I moved to Wantirna. We lived in Wantirna, so I was out there for quite a while. Wow. And I went to high school in Heathmont, and it's interesting. It was pretty unremarkable. I mean, obviously, my parents getting divorced, that was a big thing. But I have to say, I look back and I really see that was the right thing to happen. There are times when two people just shouldn't be married.
Yeah. How old were you then?
I was 7 when they got divorced. 7. Yeah. And it was obviously, like I said, it was hard, but there are absolutely times when divorce is the better option. Yeah, it is a better option to be divorced and be happy than to stay together and be miserable. And that was definitely the case for my parents. So it was, I think I became Muslim when I was 19. And if I look backwards from that point, from before I became Muslim, I can sort of see how there was I always had this awareness of God throughout my life growing up, this absolute belief in God. And I was raised in a very relaxed Christian household. Like the rule was we had to go to church, to Sunday school until we were in high school. And I remember I found Sunday school super boring because they were always boring activities and it was always cold. I don't know why, it was always cold and just, it wasn't fun. And so I was very happy when I got to high school and I didn't have to go to Sunday school anymore. But even despite that, I was acutely aware of the presence of God and my belief in God.
Wow.
And it was when I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to connect with God in a different way. And so I started going to a different church to my parents. Oh, wow. So my parents were going to the Uniting Church, it was like, don't get me wrong, it was a lovely experience. I cannot fault my Christian upbringing in that all the people I came into contact with, all the Christians in my life were wonderful, good people, like the kind of people, the model people to be encountered with. But the Uniting Church, I just kind of felt like, it's a bit stuffy. It's a bit old fashioned. I want something cool. So I started going to the Baptist church. And if you don't, I don't know how familiar you are with Christian denominations.
So I know.
Right. The Baptist church was cool, in that it had cool music, a lot of like the singing was drums and electric guitars and it was kind of funky. And I was like, this is cool. So I started going there without my parents. So I'd go there by myself every Sunday. And I was really feeling like I feel a connection to this. This is feeling better. But even then, even though I felt an absolute belief in God, there was something that was always gnawing about, I don't know, I'm not sure about this. And so, when I was 17, I just started to wonder, well, why do I believe that this is true? Is it because I actually think that it's true, or is that this is just what I've been raised to believe? And so I decided I was going to look into different religions, except Islam. Didn't want to know about Islam because it looked horrendous to me. It looked outdated, barbaric, sexist, all the standard stereotypes. And remember, this is pre-9/11. Yeah. So the only thing I thought I knew about Islam was this horrible movie I hope you've never seen called Not Without My Daughter. You know it. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, awful. And
that was an amazing marketing campaign about Islam.
Yeah, I know. That was literally it. Which was not good. And so I was like, I'm interested in different religions except Islam. Obviously, no one would ever be interested in that. But to my surprise, despite being adamantly not interested in Islam, I found that I just kept stumbling across information about it. So I'd turn on the TV, there'd be a documentary about Islam, or I'd open the newspaper, there'd be interviews with Muslims. I was like, oh, this is weird. And so that just kind of kept permeating a bit. And then I decided, well, I'm going to see what this religion says about itself.
Till then you haven't met a Muslim?
So I met the first Muslim I met must have been about year 9. This guy came to my school. He was a refugee from Afghanistan. And I didn't know anything about Islam, but either he told us he was Muslim or the teacher told us he was Muslim. And so I looked up back then, this is pre-Google and Wikipedia, guys. This was when you used to have to go to the book.
The white pages.
I've got a set, believe it. Still got it.
Right. So I went to the encyclopedia and I'm like, okay, so what's Islam? And I look it up. And the only thing it said to me was that Muslims, I don't know, that Muslims believe that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a prophet because the clouds used to follow him during the day. That was it. And I'm like,
that was Oxford. Wow.
That's okay. And so I'm like, okay, well, I guess this is what this guy believes. That was it. So I didn't really have a lot to do with him. I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, but there wasn't much of a connect. We weren't really close friends or anything like that.
I just want to touch on a point as well. That you, at a young age, you were very observant to the signs, which you just mentioned. You just mentioned that, on the TV, there was a documentary. All of a sudden, Muslim's been interviewed. You were actually very conscious of those signs at a young age? I remember being like, this is interesting. Why do I keep seeing this when I don't care about this stuff? So I think... Yeah, and I don't know, maybe is it just because now that I'm looking in retrospect, you can start to see the patterns where at the time maybe it seemed just all very coincidental. But I think it was, it sort of got to a point where I was about 17 and I thought, well, I want to know, I'd read enough for me to be like, there's more to this than I think. There's more to this than Not Without My Daughter. So why don't I go and see what the religion says about itself, as opposed to what I see Muslims doing in the name of Islam, but also the hatchet jobs that you see on, back then it was Today Tonight and A Current Affair. Yeah. So when I was in year 12 and I was meant to be studying for my year 12 exams, I read my way through Riyadh al-Salihin. I don't know why I thought I'll start with that. What a thing to choose though.
You just chose that yourself.
Yeah, I'm like, well, because it's not like again, this was like 25 years ago. There were not a lot of books about Islam in English, remember? Yes. We live now and there's so many great books about Islam, but back then there were about 3 and they were badly printed, always from Pakistan. The pages went the wrong way. Like there wasn't a lot,
That's so true. Yeah. You open one up, you're upside down. What's going on here? Right. Somebody forgot to put the page
there was not a lot. There was not a lot. So I guess I came across what I could. And so I kept reading. And the more I read and the more I learned, I'm like, this is, there's something here.
Wow.
And it got to the point where, through my first year of uni and that I kept reading and kept investigating. And it got to a point where it's funny. I didn't realize until much later. I don't even know if I read any of the Quran before I became Muslim. Wow. It was all the seerah. It got to the point where I was absolutely convinced that the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet, that I could not argue with his prophethood. And so if I absolutely believe that this man is who he says he is, like all the doubts that I had, then I'm like, well, then this religion must be true. And so I was at uni, and I was like, I still remember I was in a tutorial for psychology, because I remember I'd said to myself, if it gets to a point where all of these questions are answered, like, the standard accusations that are leveled against the Prophet ﷺ, that, he was crazy or that he was a liar, all of that. Maybe he was well-intentioned, but he just didn't know, he was confused. I remember thinking beforehand, if I can have all of those disproven, like if I can have all of these addressed in a way that convinces me, then I don't have any reason not to be Muslim. And I realized the day before I'd read a book where it had just systematically just bang, bang, bang. And suddenly the next day I was in my psych shoot, and this realization that like, oh, whoa. So now I told myself that if this was the case, then I should become Muslim, and that's where I am now. And I could see the tutor talking. It's like those scenes in a movie where you see people talking around you but there's no noise. And it was just like this profound moment of what, this must mean I'm Muslim now, because I genuinely believe this. And so it's funny, like in many ways, like I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to be Muslim. Like it's hard to be Muslim as an Australian today. Like I knew my family weren't going to be happy. They weren't. I knew most of my friends probably at best wouldn't understand. And again, this is pre-9/11.
You never shared that journey with anybody in the family?
I think they knew something was up, that because I'd stopped going to church and I was trying to work out, well, what do I actually think now? And so I think they knew something was, I was interested in this.
Were you with mum, living with mum?
Yeah, I was still living at home with my mum and my stepdad and my brother. And but it got to the point, it's funny, I decided to become Muslim. And I took my shahada, and I thought, I'm too scared to tell my parents. I'm not going to tell mum yet. I'm too nervous. And so I went home and I thought, I'll just tell her in a few weeks or when I'm more confident or whatever. I said, oh, so what are we having for dinner tonight? She said, we're having pork chops. And I'm like,
oh, no.
Well, I guess I have to tell you. So I'm like, oh, I'm not going to tell you, mum.
Wow. The pork chops did it.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, maybe if we're chicken or whatever, we can be like, oh, well,
Could have waited a week.
Like, we can sort of stretch it to be like, this is okay, but this is...
It's not that with the pork chops.
It was a litmus test, exactly. So, yeah, and then I was...
How was her reaction when you...
I mean, to her credit, like, she wasn't thrilled. She was upset. She gave me a hug, but she wasn't happy. And it's, at the time I was, 19, and I don't know if you remember being 19. I teach a lot of 19-year-olds at uni. So that age is very it's very idealistic. Yes. It's very like, I want to do good things in the world and this is how the world should be, and you're very conscious of injustice. So I think I was very like, God, Mum, just let me live my life. Like, why can't you be supportive, whatever. But now I'm a parent. I've got a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old. I can imagine if one of my kids came home and said, I'm joining a religion you don't know much about, but what you do know looks terrible, I would be deeply concerned as well. So I can now much better understand what it must have been like for my mum. For me to say that, it would have been horrible. She would have thought I was joining a cult.
Yes,
imagine if one of your kids said that to you. You'd be aghast. So, my poor mum, and I think she probably, she probably hoped it was a phase, which, I'm sure she did. And again, at 19, it probably did seem like the kind of thing that would be a phase. But, 25 years on, I think they've accepted it's not a phase now. I've been Muslim longer than I haven't now.
Allah.
So tell us about some of those hard moments that you had within transitioning. So what would have been, we can only imagine how many of our brothers and sisters have gone through this, And maybe if we can, and especially if somebody who's currently thinking about transitioning now, and maybe if they can see some of these jewels that you went through that, gave you strength and sort of helped you move forward, inshallah.
It was a lonely experience, I'll be honest, because it did get to this point where I was like, I finally knew I was ready to be Muslim when I realized even if my family kick me out of home and don't want to talk to me, and even if all my friends reject me, I still want to do this. So I had to get to that point. I had to get to a point where I was like, this is true enough.
What made you get there? What was it that, what was that sort of, was there a light bulb moment, or was it just compounding effect?
I think it was a compounding. It wasn't, you know how people like Yusuf Islam have this amazing stories, drowning at sea, and then I wish I had that story. But for me, it was a very just slow process. It was definitely an intellectual journey. Like I was definitely convinced in my mind. And I think it helped that I already had a very firm belief in God. So I wasn't coming from an atheist background, because I think that would have been a bigger hurdle. I always believed in God. It was maybe finding the right home for that belief.
Yeah, tick your boxes.
Yeah.
Allah, Eddie said something very similar, because Eddie was a convert himself, and he goes, it was like looking at that.
He said, I believed in God dearly. This just completed
the picture, because he said, I was looking at that photo when sometimes you see the ugly woman or the pretty lady, and he goes, it just shifted my whole perspective onto that. Beautiful.
Right.
That's how he described it.
So you had no linkage with the community then?
Not really, no. So it was, okay, so I was at uni, I was in first year uni, and I was starting to think like, I think I'm really interested in Islam. And so this is in the very early days of the internet, where we didn't have the internet at home, but we had it at uni. Yeah. So I went to university, and I don't even know if we had Google. I don't know what I looked up, but I've searched.
Yahoo those days.
Yahoo.
Yeah, it was probably Bing. I don't know what we were using. And I looked up to see if there was Muslims at my uni. And I found a group of Muslim women. There was a group of Muslim women. So I just emailed them and said, I'm interested in Islam. Can we meet up? And alhamdulillah, they were a lovely bunch of women. We met, they started talking to me, and they really sort of took me under their wing and helped me. I started going to some classes with them.
Wow.
I was pretty close at that point, I think, already, but still not ready to take the final step. And so having them helped a lot.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
Which uni?
Monash.
Monash.
Yeah,
Nice.
Monash uni.
So
yeah.
homegrown Monash, still in Monash, subhanAllah.
Horrendous. I know. It's
We always go back to our roots.
I know. Exactly. I'm still there.
Subhanallah.
So that was, in terms of like the struggle of it, alhamdulillah, obviously I had these women who were my friends, but, when you feel like you're really disappointing your family, that's not a small thing. Like, I think it was very, very hard with my family, and a lot of my friends didn't understand it. And again, from their perspective, I can see it. And so it felt extremely lonely. But in that loneliness, it really sort of solidified that from the beginning of my being Muslim, it was just me and Allah. And so no matter what, I knew that this will always be here. No matter what happens from now on, even now, like that's always what it will always come back to. And it will, for all of us, that will be what it comes back to ultimately.
That's it, exactly. And that's the beauty about Islam. Islam is such a religion that is about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
Nobody's else is involved. You're only going to be held accountable with him.
That's exactly.
Nobody else. And subhanAllah, and I think even for myself, like, it's that relationship I have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
And, we don't have to have a relationship with a priest or anybody else that connects us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. We are there. It's us. One-on-one.
Was your brother also, what I want to understand is that you had these things going through your head that you're going to lose your family, you're going to lose all your friends. Did that take place? Did you lose everybody?
A lot of friends, I think, were just like, this is weird. And so I did lose a lot. I did lose a lot of friends. And also it didn't help in that I decided I wanted to wear hijab pretty much straight away. So I think by the time I became Muslim, like I'd worked through all that.
Wow.
Like I'd worked through all that. So I was in your face. Like, my friends couldn't, like this wasn't something that they could avoid or we could pretend wasn't happening. So a couple of friends, alhamdulillah, were really cool and supportive of my non-Muslim friends, but a lot were just like, this is weird. And also like in Australia, religion is not something that's really respected. Religion is something that is sneered at. Yeah. And taking a religion seriously and also living a religion publicly. Yeah. We're very much in Australia, well, first of all, we don't like religion and we think you're an idiot if you have a religion. But if you have to have it, keep it to yourself. Yeah. And a hijab, by its very definition, is a public affirmation of faith. Yeah. And so it was in their face. Wow. And coupled with all of that, then all the way it's viewed through a gendered lens and it's oppressive and blah, blah, blah. Like it brought a lot with it. And so from the beginning, it was like, this is it. Right.
But you had a fight on your hands, really, didn't you?
Yeah. And I think particularly, again, for my mum, I think it was hard for her. She was a 70s feminist, that kind of feminist. And so, to see her daughter be like, well, this is how I want to dress. I think for her it was just like, but this is not what I would want for my daughter, you know. Wow. So again, I think because it was, you know, in her face. And I think maybe if I hadn't worn the hijab straight away, like if I'd waited a few years or whatever, maybe things would have been different. But I think to a lot of non-Muslims, the hijab is very confronting. And so I guess maybe it wasn't my intention, but maybe me dressing like this was seen therefore as a confrontation. It was never intended that way. It's not. The hijab is about me and Allah. It's not about me and anybody else. But other people, I think, can't help but take it as a comment on them.
Yes. Is that what drew you to wanting to make change and, you know, publicly get out there and say, because of the hardships, to say, well, I've got to do my part. I don't know.
I think maybe for me, like wanting to do stuff was, for me, once I believe this is true, it's like, this is what you have to do. I'm Muslim now. You pray 5 times a day. You fast Ramadan. You wear a hijab. Like, this is what you have to do. Wow. And in terms of like speaking publicly or whatever, I think that really just came when you're a convert, and you're obviously a convert like me. Like I said, you're wearing hijab. People are going to have a lot of questions. You know, you can't. So people will come up and say, well, why do you wear that? Or you're also expected from the second you become Muslim to be an expert on 1,500 years of political history. Well, so tell us about the Sunni Shiite split. And I'm like, whoa. You know, well, what's happening for the women in Afghanistan? Or, you know, suddenly you're expected to be, tell us about Saddam Hussein. And all of these, you know, the Ottoman Empire. Talk to us about the fall of that. I'm like, I'm 19. I just became Muslim. But you are expected. So you have to get up to speed pretty quickly on a lot of these things and have good answers about, well, why can a man have 4 wives? Or, you know, all of these things. Us about that. Ask your wife, mate.
That's a good one.
Hello, my baddie.
But so like it or not as a convert, and once it's obvious you're a convert, like I think if you're a man or you're a woman who doesn't wear hijab straight away, you can kind of go under the radar a bit. But if you're obviously a Muslim and you're a convert, people are going to ask. And so whether you want to be or not, you will be a spokesperson. Exactly, You just have to be. SubhanAllah,
that's amazing. That is, because we don't say it that way, especially when you're a convert. It's a different world really for us. We were born Muslim. Like, SubhanAllah, we're not confronted as much comparatively, you know what I mean? Because SubhanAllah, that does push you to elevate, doesn't it really?
Yeah.
Can you take us through your Year 12 days and career path? You know, obviously, you know, we've all been down that path where, you know, you 11, 12, you don't know what you want to do really. Can you take us through that? And what drew you to your career path?
So when I was in high school, I knew I couldn't pick. I loved the arts and the humanities, like literature and English and languages, but I also loved the sciences. I just couldn't choose. So when I was in Year 12, I did 3 of the humanities and 3 sciences. So I did chemistry, methods and biology, and I also did English literature and German. And it was a full split. And then when I finished high school, I still couldn't pick. I still but I love them both. So I did an arts degree and a science degree. I did them together because I'm still like, maybe I'll just do it for a year and then I'll know what I want to do. And after a year, maybe then I can funnel into something more specific. But I just kept going and I loved both. And so I did, you know, I did both my degrees. And when I finished both my degrees, I had an invitation to do honours in both. I could have done honours in one of my science majors or honours in sociology, my arts major.
Inshallah.
And I'm like, what do I choose? Like, I love them both. But in the end, I think I have a very curious mind. And maybe that's sort of part of what sort of led me to Islam as well, is that I have a curious mind and I like being proven wrong. Like, it's actually, I find it quite exhilarating when something you think you know, someone goes, well, actually, did you know blah, blah, blah? And you're like, I didn't know that. Like, that changes everything. So maybe that's part of me becoming Muslim as well, is that like I don't generally, like, I find when you finding out something is totally different to what I thought, I find that really exciting.
Inshallah.
So anyway, I finished my science degree and my arts degree, and I thought, well, I was Muslim by this point, and I was really enjoying the sociology of religion, was an area that I was into. And I was interested in the Muslim community, and I was interested in the way we did Islam. Like, what does it look like in practice? And so I thought, well, okay, I'll do honours in sociology, and I did that and I loved it, and then I got offered a PhD scholarship, and so I thought, well, this is what I'll do, and I kept just sort of thinking, I'll just do this and then I'll know what I'll want to do, and now I've done a PhD and I'm a full-time academic, and I guess that is what I am now. But I think I love it because I get to keep asking a lot of questions. I get to keep investigating, well, why is it like that? And particularly in our community and the way faith impacts our community and the way we do things. Wow. I'm really interested in that. I find that really interesting. And so it's just sort of, it's cascaded from there.
Evolved. Mashallah.
Yeah.
Wow, mashallah. So education, and now you are educating.
Well, it's funny. I don't think about that. It's funny how even when you introduce me, like, tell us, we'd love to hear about your story of success. I don't think of myself in that way. Like, I don't think about it in terms of success, or I think I'm very conscious of my failures. I have many of them. I'm happy to talk about them. But it's funny. I would never see myself in that way, and I'm not sure what it is. Maybe because it's about how we define success, or what it is. But yeah, I think
everybody's different.
Yeah.
So we've had so many different brothers and sisters that have come on a podcast, and they all define success differently. So this is the question we ask: is that how do you personally define success?
I think success would be, and this isn't something I've pre-planned. This isn't like an answer I'm going to tell the Safi brothers this. So I'm workshopping it as I tell you. So you might push me on it and I'll go, actually, I don't think that. But I think a successful life is one that as we are closing our eyes as we die, and inshallah saying our shahada, that we feel peace about it, that we aren't looking back. And, I think if we get to that moment, none of us, well, I assume most of us will not be like, if only I'd earned an extra 10K or bought that business or got that extra award. We won't be thinking about that. Wow. All the things that make up a good and successful life are the good that we've put out into the world, what we've sent ahead for akhirah, and how we've impacted the people around us. That is the successful life. And so I sincerely believe you can be extremely successful and have a very, unremarkable career. Just a whatever, like 9 to 5 or whatever, or you can have an extremely impressive, by dunya sense, career. Yeah. It's neither here nor there. And I remember having this conversation with my kids when my husband started working full-time on the project, because it's a big, suddenly Dad goes from being just a regular dude, like he was doing other media stuff, but now he's on billboards.
I know.
Let's never speak about that again. But like now Dad's suddenly on billboards and he's at the bus stops and stuff like that, and he's on TV every night. And, I remember saying to my kids, it's really important, that your job, Dad's job, my job, anyone's job is not a marker of success, because one day Dad's job will end. Sure. He will either quit or he'll be fired, or he'll decide he wants to do something else, and he will still be the same person he is, and he'll be the same person that he is now. And if you pin your identity to what you do, you will always feel insecure and uncertain. And you see it in people who, when they retire or they lose their jobs, they're totally lost and crushed. Like, who am I? That is not who you are. You have to pin your identity to the one thing that doesn't change, and that's your relationship to Allah. That's what it is. All the other stuff, because it will. Otherwise, you can get suddenly you can start seeing like their dad doing this job and think, wow, this means something. Yeah. It doesn't. It's a job. He's no more important than if he were a dentist or a plumber or the street cleaner. He just happens to be on TV, but our society seems to think that if you're on TV or in the movies or whatever, it means something. He just happens to do his job in front of a lot of people. There's no, but in and of itself, there is no inherent value in that. In any job, there's not. It's what you bring to it, and also that is not who you are. It's what you do. It's not who you are.
Exactly.
Can I ask, Waleed, going into the media, did you both know the catapult situation that it could do to the family? And because obviously I know you, like we said, he was in media before. I know he was doing radio. So that decision as a family, did you sit down together and say, okay, do we really want to do this? Do we really want to be out? Because one of the reasons why we never did the Safi Bros podcast, it's been 2 years in the planning for my big brother, is because we don't want to be in the limelight. We don't want, like you mentioned before, we were having a conversation, Hasad, we don't want that. So, but then we as Muslims, we understand that circumstances, depending on the career, there's fard line. There's no one doing a good job. You need to start doing it.
Yeah.
That family conversation around the table. Did you have that conversation? The hardships that were going to come, the struggles, or
No, we did. We talked about it a lot. And it's, I guess, because there were all these different things that led up to it, these sort of micro things. Like it started because Waleed was the media spokesperson for the Islamic Council of Victoria.
That's right,
yeah, that's how it all
we called the A-team, the ICV A-team.
He was doing an amazing job.
Yeah, exactly. Assad, it was back in the day. And so, it started then, and that's when, we started doing stuff. And that was right after September 11. And so often I would get asked to do things as well because the media, they were like, oh, we don't know a single Muslim. Like they had none in there. They'd never even thought about Muslims up until that. There was none in their, their Rolodex. But they'd interview Wal and they'd be like, oh, well, you've got a wife. Why don't we talk to both of you? Oh, she's a convert. That's an interesting media story. So we'd start doing that kind of, little media things here and there. So we'd done a lot of media up until that point. And obviously, Waleed, his full-time job before then had been on ABC Radio. Right. And so we'd had a lot of sort of conversations and awareness along the way about what does this mean and the good of it, but also the real challenges of it and how you have to, I think, you have to be really aware of and protect yourself if you're going out into the world like that. One, you have to be really clear about your niyyah, your intention, I think. But if you're like, well, I want to be famous, that can be your niyyah, but I don't agree with that. I think that's absolutely wrong. You've got to think about what is your niyyah and always getting back to it. And always, I think particularly with the media now, is that no matter what you do, unless you start your own network, you are going to feel compromised in some way. And that's a lot of jobs as well. There are times I feel compromised at work as well. So that's nature. So you've got to be like, am I willing and do I think the compromises I will have to make outweigh the potential benefit? I remember speaking to scholars about Waleed's situation in particular, saying, what do you think? This is the downside and this is the upside. What do you think? And what's interesting is they always said, our opinion is that if you get this opportunity, you have to take it. We need people out there. We need, because what's the alternative? There was no Muslims out there talking.
There was the taxi driver. They specifically went to that taxi rank. What do you think of this?
Exactly. The poor guy just arrived. Yeah. I know. So, and I also know for myself, again, bringing it back to the hijab, which I know it sounds superficial, whatever, but I know for myself when I see Basha Hooley's wife, for example, wore the hijab to the Brownlows one year. Yes. And I remember how much that meant to me. I loved seeing that. This means something, seeing people who are openly Muslim in public life, that does something to us. I think it does. I remember reading this fascinating study that was done in Morocco where they did this really interesting study where they did a test with these stall holders in a Moroccan market, and they found that when they could hear the adhan, they would give more in charity. And they didn't know that. They didn't know this is what was being tested. They thought they were being checked on something else. But when the adhan went off, these men would give more and more and more in charity. And I think that what that points to is public religion matters. We need to see these symbols of religiosity in our world that, like I said, in Australia, everything's about keep it to yourself and keep it private or whatever. But there is benefit to seeing public displays of religiosity. And so I think we want people that we can look up to who are Muslim, who are achieving or public or in different fields, because it shows us it can be done. Otherwise we think, well, I guess, either I can be the imam or I can do whatever, but that's it. Those are my options. Otherwise it's just not possible. And you need to see people who go, no, I fast Ramadan and I do my TV show every night, like Waleed, for example. It can be done. And you don't have to you don't have to be ashamed of who you are. I think maybe it's changing in our community, but I know for a while there was sort of an underlying sense of we felt lesser than. We felt we had to feel embarrassed about who we are. And now we can go, no, it's not arrogance, it's just who we are. We feel we've got something to offer.
How did that work?
Shalala Bedik. SubhanAllah. Like how many times have we crossed paths? And I said to Ahmed, SubhanAllah, it's amazing that we've had the opportunity to actually have a conversation, because we never have that conversation. through benevolence, my kids.
Exactly. I think up to all your kids, mashallah, all your boys.
That's what I'm saying. So I've never spoken to Susan.
Yeah.
Wait, it's not like, oh, excuse me, can I have a chat with you? Do you know what I mean?
Susan, we need to chat ASAP.
Do you know what I mean? SubhanAllah, it's SubhanAllah, how you just, SubhanAllah.
Yeah, how it came together.
Allah connects.
So we're really getting to know you here right now. SubhanAllah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Well, we'll have to return it one day. I'll interview you guys.
Allahumma barik.
So since we gave Waleed Ali the plug before, so now that we know you like the hard road, so how did you meet Waleed and how did that take place? I really like to know because I don't know. Sorry.
That's so funny, the hard road. Yeah, no, to be fair, I think I can say poor Waleed. I think I am his test in this world and he's my reward because he's a good man, mashallah. He's a very good husband. He's extremely good. Very nice, very, very nice man, mashallah. So we met, it's funny, I knew Waleed before I became Muslim, but it wasn't until once I became Muslim, there was this woman in the community, this older Egyptian woman who's like, I think you guys would be really good together. And you know, she's like, how about if I arrange a meeting or whatever? And I was like, I just wasn't feeling it. And this was right. You know, I'd only been Muslim. I don't even know if I'd been Muslim for a year. Things were still really difficult with my family. And I was just like, I can't think about this. And I'm like, look, I'm really not interested. And Waleed, to his credit, he was persistent. And I think he rang me one day to be like, look, what's going on? Are you interested or not? And I was horrible. He's like, this is how you know he's a good man. I'm a terrible person. He's like, you know, are you interested? Whatever. And I said, listen, I wouldn't marry you if you were the last man on earth.
Allah.
Wow.
I was terrible. I told you I was a terrible person. And he's like, okay, got that message. And so he disappeared. And so, and I think I wasn't ready to get married and things were hard with the family. And I was just like, I don't need one more person pushing on me. Just back off. I'm not interested.
Wow.
And so that was that. I went my way, he went his.
Was he at the same uni?
No, he was at a different, he was at Melbourne Uni.
Okay, there you go.
And so, you know, a bit of time passed and people suggested, well, what about this brother? What about that brother? Whatever. And I noticed that in my mind I kept mentally comparing them to Waleed. I'm like, why do I do that? I don't even like that guy.
More sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything you compare.
I know. And so I think, and then I was like, oh, maybe I do. Maybe actually when I think about what a good Muslim husband looks like, maybe this is what I'm looking for. Oh no, what have I done? I was so awful to him and I told him to get lost basically. And so I went back to this woman who'd been sort of arranging things. I said, look, I think maybe I kind of do like Waleed. She's like, well, I don't like your chances now. Look what you've done. She goes, all right, I'll speak to him. But I think the chances are very slim after what you said, which is true.
Wow.
But because, again, Waleed is a better person than me, when she went back to him, he's like, no, I'm still interested. Yeah. And so it kind of went from there. Yeah.
Naseeb,
yeah.
No
so,
one can stop Naseeb.
Yeah, I think we had captivated when I was 21 and then we had the walima when I was 22 and then we had our first baby when I was 23. So yeah, bang.
How long have you been married now?
21 and a half years.
Mashallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah, Naseeb.
Yeah.
No one can stop Naseeb.
That's
Even when you
it.
told him,
I
no,
know.
never. The last man you ended up marrying. Do you know one thing I've realised? SubhanAllah, I used to work for an Italian boss of mine. Biggest mentor, taught me how to sell, people's person. And he'd always, as a joke, would say, Ibo, I don't care what happens as long as my daughters never marry Muslims. I'm like,
it's hard to your face.
Yeah, because he was so because you have to understand something. He came from the Roxburgh Park area, so the community wasn't the best limelight. And I said, Pat, be careful the oath you make.
Yeah.
I used to always say that to him as a young person.
Yeah.
Be careful the oath you make.
Yeah.
Don't go making an oath against Allah.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, he goes, it's the worst thing that can happen. It will never happen. And I'm like, Pat, please don't do it. And lo and behold, both his daughters became Muslims.
Yeah.
Both?
And both married Muslims.
And both married Muslims.
How's Pat now?
Pat's no longer with us. But
was he okay?
No,
he was
passed
fine.
away.
No,
but what I mean was when his daughters became Muslim,
he wasn't okay. He wasn't okay. He used to come to my house. We used to count. But subhanAllah, and I'd say those same things. Like Muslims, I know Muslims that have made oaths to their kids, please, whatever you do, don't bring this particular race home.
Yeah.
And the first thing that happened, and that's what I say, when you made that oath, a very similar oath, saying, you'll be the last man on the face of this earth. And I was like, come here.
Yeah.
I'll fix you up.
Yeah.
You think you're in charge?
Yeah.
It always happens.
That's
a lot.
Very true.
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot, I swear to you. And I'd say, be careful to make the oath you make because you're not in power.
That is so true.
SubhanAllah. I just thought I'd
That's
share that.
so
Because
true.
I see it time and time again, people making these oaths. And I'm like, please don't do that. That's not up to you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends that particular person.
Yeah, so we say, oh Allah, if it's good for me, make it happen.
Yes.
If it's not good, take it away. You know?
Yes.
That was a dua we made for this podcast. Oh Allah, if it's good for us, make it happen. Like even though we was very resistant to doing it.
So talk to us through plugging into the community. You've become a Muslim now.
Yeah.
Where did you go? What made you attract to different communities or plugging in? Were you part of Coburg at all? No?
I think so. When I first became Muslim, so I had those women at my uni who became my friends and they were lovely. And that was we were quite connected. Do you remember Isna and Iska back in the day?
Yes, Isna and Iska.
Yeah. So, and this was, again, so early. You mentioned the white pages before. I remember when I first became Muslim and so I was like, well, how do I find an organisation? So I went to the white pages and looked up Islam. Wow. And I rang, so Iska was there. So I rang there.
Medina Meets?
Yeah, so I looked up and it was because Iska was like Islamic. I can't remember what Iska stood for, but anyway, the I was Islam. Yeah. So Iska were in the white pages and I rang them. I'm like, hello, like I've just become Muslim. Do you have any classes? And so I kind of plugged in that way. And the women that I was at uni with, we went to a lot of their things. So a lot of the lectures that came out that way. But I also got connected to YMA. So I went to some of the YMA things. I got to know some of the women through that, which is how I got to know Sarah.
Oh,
yeah. And so I sort of was... I knew that I loved Islam and I wanted – we have this thing that we see in converts we call Convertitis, where you become Muslim and you're like, right, that's it, I'm at 100. So, where you just so – it comes from a good place, you're passionate about the deen and all that, but you can go a bit too quick, too fast. So I was just like, I want to do everything and I'm going to pray 1 million prayers a day and I'm going to learn everything and I'll become a scholar and like all this stuff, because I was just so like wanting to go right into it. So I went to a lot of classes and different things and alhamdulillah, I met some really great people in the community that way and I learned from a lot of different people and learned very quickly that when I first became Muslim, I had this idea, that there is one correct Islam and there is this one correct and everything else is wrong. And so, suddenly I'd start to meet different Muslims who'd say different things and I'd be like, well, which of you is right? And then I'd realize, wait, there's this thing called difference of opinion. How can this be? But how can it be true? And so that was like a real spiritual grappling. I remember there was this point after I'd been Muslim for maybe a year or two where what I thought everything was black and white, that it wasn't actually that way. And I remember feeling something of a spiritual freefall, like how if there isn't just one right answer and everything else is wrong and there actually is legitimate scholarly difference of opinion on these things, how do I do the right thing by Allah? And so that was something that I really had to try to get my head around.
I think we all have.
Yeah, and I think it's an ongoing journey, isn't it, as well? 100%. It's like, the Muslim we were 10 years ago, inshallah, that's not who we are now. We're always improving and learning more, and inshallah, who we are in 10 years will be better people and know more, inshallah.
Ameen.
So, yeah, it was in those early days I went to a few different things. But again, remember, right just before September 11, there wasn't a lot. And then September 11 happened, obviously, and then the community went into understandably quite a reactive mode where we were kind of always on the defensive and trying to, okay, what do we do and how do we deal with this within ourselves, but also how do we deal with the way people are responding to us? And so, participating in Sarah's My Dress, My Image, My Choice and being invited to speak at schools and media interviews and things like that. It was a time where I felt like for the Muslim community, we couldn't really get our breath because we were so busy we're not who you think we are. We're not terrorists. Like Islam is peace and love and all of that. And we never really got to think about, hang on, instead of me telling you who I'm not, who am I? Yes. Instead of defining myself in the negative, what am I? And what do I want to tell you about what my religion teaches? Wow. Instead of always coming back to, well, jihad doesn't mean this. Hang on, what do I want to tell you about what I believe and what's important and banging on always
constantly
about the hijab or whatever.
Reaction.
What do we have to offer? So we're kind of at that point where I think we're on a bit of a treadmill and I think I'm seeing the community. We're coming out of that now, but it was for a long time because it was September 11 and then there were a lot of things that bang, bang, bang after that, just terrible event after terrible event. And it really wasn't until I think about 2019 that things started to change in a very obvious way. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, subhanAllah. That growth is so important for us.
So it is. And subhanAllah, how you touch base on your sort of journey of change as well. And every one of us has that, It's amazing how our perspective and, subhanAllah, as I say, like we have those blinkers on, and how many brothers and sisters we have out there that have, this is the only way, you know what I mean? And how do you open up those horizons to see it's quite a diverse Islam,
Yes.
Leads us to
it's a straight path, but it's a wide straight path.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
I've always said, subhanAllah, Islam is, all these organizations are doing part of the body.
Yeah.
There's no complete body.
That's exactly
until
right.
they all come together, Right.
And different people will have, some people just have a naturally Salafi heart. And some people have a natural Sufi heart. That is just who they are. This is how Allah's made them. And instead of going, this is wrong, that's wrong, let them be. Let them be. It's like you said, it's serving a different part of the community. And it all matters. It's all needed.
You missed one path. There's the Salafi, the Sufi, and the Safi.
He always says that. He always says that. It's terrible. People are going to start thinking we've got a sect.
You're the cult leader. I'm going to be studying you as part of my university work.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe
You have to cut that out.
Leave that in. Don't cut that out.
They're going to be asking for quarter.
There's a lot of other S's in between as well. Let's not talk about it. Alhamdulillah. Allahumma barik. So, mashallah, there's a lot of challenges that you face, mashallah. Like writing your book, I think that would have been a very big highlight of, what made you get into that. And
yeah, it's interesting you say that as a highlight. It wasn't. I hated it. As an academic, I don't enjoy writing.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a problem. It's a big part of my job. My book was actually my PhD thesis. And I remember when I was doing the research for that thesis and interviewed a lot of women in Australia and overseas for it, I thought, I don't want this just to sit on, so what happens is when you submit a PhD thesis, it gets assessed, gets marked, and then a hard copy is put on the library shelf. And I thought, I don't think nothing in here that is good and interesting is from me. None of this is me. It's the words of the women that I've spoken to, and it's our history, the Islamic history of this, the Muslim history, all the way back to the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is what's interesting and important. I've just tied it all together, but none of it's mine. And I will feel sad if this important work, like I said, it's not mine, the words of these women and our history, if it just sits on a shelf gathering dust and no one reads about it. Because the whole reason I did this topic, the topic I did of my PhD was Muslim women fighting sexism within the Muslim community from a pro-faith perspective. And the reason I did it was because I was always being asked by non-Muslims, but isn't Islam so oppressive and whatever? Yeah. So there was always that. But also there was also an ignorance in our community that whenever, if a woman was like, I think we should do something about domestic violence in our community, there'd always be a segment of our community that's like, oh, you Western feminists, you've been westernized, why are you airing our dirty laundry, why are you trying to change things? And these women be saying, no, this is what our religion teaches. It's a woman's right to be able to access this or do that or whatever. Yeah, so there was this tension.
Yeah, the taboo topics.
It is.
Don't talk about it.
Right. Or also this belief that we didn't have this history, whereas throughout history we've always had amazing Muslim women, even at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who would use their religion. This wasn't a rejection of their faith, who would use their religion to say, my husband's not giving me my right. Or, so for example, a classic example is, there was the woman who came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, my parents forced me to get married against my will. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if that's happened, your marriage is annulled because you have to give your consent. And the woman said, actually, I'm happy to stay married to him. He's a good man. But I wanted to come and say this so our community would know that parents can't do this to their daughters.
Wow.
So, this is a perfect example of a woman coming up and saying, I know my rights in the deen. Allah is telling me this is my right. I'm going to use the religion to make sure I get what women are owed. So we've got this throughout history, right? And so it became this difficult thing for women in our community. I remember I spoke to one woman, a leader, who said, I wanted to organise a panel on women being able to join the workforce. We've got single mothers who need to work or whatever, just the permissibility of whatever. And she said, it's a tension because I've got people on the panel, I've got a diverse group of Muslims, and I want to invite the media because I want to get this story out there. But I know if someone says something, that the media will even be like, oh, so women aren't allowed to work. Like the fact that you're even talking about, she's like, so what do I do? Do I make it public and we have this conversation we need to have about the need, why are women in our community and that they can work or whatever? Or do we not talk about it because if we do, we actually can reinforce Islamophobic attitudes? Like it's this tension.
Double-edged sword.
Yeah, it's called a double bind is the term. It's exactly right. It's a double-edged sword. And so my thesis was just about these women who are passionate Muslims who like, I love Allah. Like I love my deen. I want to do what my deen teaches. And us being treated this way, this is wrong according to Islam. But then I'll have people in the community that criticize me and say, oh, you're this crazy feminist and you're trying to change the religion and all this. So that's what the thesis was. And so I knew if I turned it into a book, and you have to do publicity when a book comes out, as you will find out, it brings a lot of attention, a lot of it which is negative. Yeah. I knew that would happen, but I'm like, but this is important. It's an important part of our history. I want non-Muslims to know, but I also want young Muslims to know this is our tradition. Like, you know, that you can stand up for what is right and what the rights that Allah has given women. And that's part of the deen. Don't ever let anyone put a human interpretation of the faith over what Allah has said. Amen. But I've turned it into a book, even though I knew it was going to be awful. The reaction would be awful that I have issues within the community and issues outside the community. But I'm like, well, I think this is a story that needs to be told. And what's nice for me now is particularly when young Muslims come and say, I read that book and that changed things. Because I'd always been made to feel, well, this doesn't feel right. Or like the treatment for like, you know, what happens when, you know, a woman goes to the mosque and she can't see and she can't hear and the door's always locked and they can't even get into the mosque. And I've been told, well, if you say anything about it, that's against Islam. And, you know, when I read this and I realized actually, you know, women should have access to the mosque and, you know, they should be able to hear and they should be able to see, like, this, I shouldn't feel ashamed as a Muslim for asking this. Allah's given me this. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, this wasn't how it was at the mosque. You know, so I
think more cultural, it becomes more cultural than anything.
The cultural aspects come in.
I know, that's the thing. And again, like I want to think well of people and I want to assume no one in our community who does that is trying to do the wrong thing. No one's, but I think sometimes maybe they don't realize the consequences of that. Like what it feels like when, as a woman, you are allowed to go to the mosque.
Oh, there's a lot of people that are living in their own bubbles, isn't it? And a lot of communities that live in their own bubbles, they cannot see the effect, you know, the outer effect. You know, so there's this bubble and this bubble and this bubble. They're not joining.
I think also one of the biggest problems, the majority of people that have capacity and ability have got their own career paths. And majority of the community centres that have been run, mashallah, that's why one thing that really inspired us when ICV had the likes of Waleed Ali, Ahmed Imam, and because you guys were the A-team. Everyone was speaking about the changes you were making. Real influence was happening. We're capable people. We're out there making changes. But unfortunately, in the majority of these mosques and things, the most capable people are out there working, earning, where you're left with, you know, individuals
that
really
don't
have the capacity.
We're getting the dregs. Honestly, like I don't know if you noticed, but even growing up myself, I noticed a lot of the leaderships that we saw within so many different organizations, they weren't like, honestly, like the best suited people for that position. But they're the only people that are available to the community. And the community said, well, alhamdulillah, we got a brother, we're a sister. You know what I mean? But we know we had such an amazing caliber of brother and sister out there who weren't. And mashallah, yourselves were an amazing caliber and you brought a sort of an enlightenment sort of time, I think.
Yes,
myself, I'm saying from my perspective, I saw that mashallah Waleed and yourself and Ahmed Imam and you know, that group of, you know, brothers and sisters. They brought a completely different, because they were capable people, you know what I mean? Yes. They were capable people that had our back.
And I always use this analogy. It's like in your business, you know, it's, you know, turning over a certain amount of money. Would you give it to anybody? Hell no. You'd give it to somebody with capacity, ability,
the skills,
making sure he can grow that business. You know, and but what about our deen?
So
our
much more important.
So, subhanAllah, just thought I'd touch base on that.
Quick question. As you said, like there was a lot of confrontation, a lot of headaches with that. So can you sort of share some stories about that? I'd love to hear some of those stories. Like
any bulletproof vests, anything like that?
I think spiritually, it is something to be aware of. If you stick your head up, particularly not just in our community, but also just in the wider community, in the media. you need to be very prepared for what's going to come your way. And I think it can be really difficult if you're not very clear on who you are and who you're talking to. So in the end, you always need to think with every interview you do, or, you know, every speech I'd give about my book or whatever, I would always think, I've got an audience of one. I'm talking to Allah. And if I can finish this interview with you, or the speech that I give about my book or whatever, and think, you know, I can stand in front of Allah and feel like, you know, I stand by what I said. Like, I think that was right. Even if other people might misinterpret it or whatever, I knew what I was saying, then that's what matters. Because, like, I mean, you know, geez, the abuse that, you know, Waleed's story is his own one to tell, but I know that, like, the abuse and attacks that I've faced through social media in particular, and just in general, like, I'm sure one day maybe I'll talk about it. I'll come back for part 2 when this podcast is on its 10th year anniversary. I'll come back and talk about it. Like, it has been intense and difficult, and I know I have other Muslim friends, particularly women, who it's just broken them. They said, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's too hard. The abuse and the personal attacks and things like that. And I know for myself, one way I think that helped me deal with it was always trying to remind myself how I respond to it needs to be an affirmation of who I am, not who they are. So back in the day when I was on Twitter, when it was still called Twitter, I noticed that it didn't matter what I would say or do. Even if I didn't write anything on Twitter, I would be getting abuse from people. And it was like unrelenting Twitter abuse. It was because I was a woman and because I was a Muslim. Those two things come out, and then I was in the public eye, like just the abuse. And I'd do shows like Q&A or whatever, and then the abuse would come. And it was weird because I noticed it didn't seem to matter what I did. Nothing could stop it. If I ignored them, kept coming. If I argued back, kept coming. If I tried to joke with them, if I tried to like warmly engage and, you know, tried to affirm, nothing I did seem to change. And I'm like, okay, I need to take a step back and go, how can I respond in a way that is an affirmation of who I am and my beliefs, and not be reactively responding to them? And I thought, okay, well, who am I? Allah says in the Quran, respond to evil with something that is better. And that who is your enemy might actually become your friend. But respond to evil with something that is better. So I'm like, okay, I'm always getting this abuse. And it felt like there was just this, like, all this awfulness being put out into the universe. So I thought, how can I respond? And I thought, for every horrible tweet that comes my way, I will donate $1 to UNICEF.
I remember that. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
I thought that was amazing.
And so I thought, and it wasn't like I'm starting a big campaign. I didn't make a grand announcement or a press statement. I thought, this is just what I'm going to do, because that's an affirmation of me. It's not about you now. This is about me and Allah.
Yeah. Give me more.
And so I just started doing it just as a thing that I did, that I'm like, this is me being me now. Allah. This is me standing up. And I'm trying to redress this cosmic balance. For all the awful you put out, I'm going to try to do something positive.
Mashallah,
put in good amazing. And good and good. And so I just started doing it quietly, just as my own thing. And some journalist found out and wrote a story about it. And then it just, you know how these things can sort of get picked up. Like, must have been a slow news day. And it just became like this cyclone of attention. And what was interesting is that the more people heard about it, people were like, oh, well, how about if I write something mean and then you can donate $1 to UNICEF? And I'm like, well, you could just donate $1 to UNICEF yourself. You don't have to actually do that. So, like, the abuse kept coming, and I do remember at one point my husband's like, how much have we donated to UNICEF at this point? Because it was literally thousands of dollars, thousands. Wow. And it wasn't...
It was nearly sent him broke.
My famous for charity. And so, but what was... The reason I tell this story is because what I did is neither here nor there, although I do think it is important that we always come back to who am I at my core and act as an affirmation of that, not about what other people are doing. But what I found most telling and amazing about this was that when other people found out what I was doing, they wanted to contribute. So I had 2 people get in touch that I'd never met. One was a Muslim, one was a non-Muslim. Never met these people, and both of them contacted me privately. I'm going to sponsor your next $1,000 worth of hate tweets.
Wow.
So, and other people go, I'm going to pay for the next 10. Amazing. I'm going to pay for the next 50. And so I think it's, that was lovely in that it showed people, like another way that we can be in this toxic sludge of social media. And also like that a rising tide lifts all boats when I know, I'm sure you know it for yourselves. I know it for me when I see someone acting in a way that seems at first counterintuitive, but is a way that's acting with integrity. It inspires us to be like, I want to be like that too. And so that encouraged those people to do it. And then, you know, so there was all this awfulness happening, but so much more good, you know, and that was something that I think, you know, like I said, it's not a story about me, but it's a story really about the great things that other people did.
That's really the sunnah of the Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That is the key. That is the key.
Yeah.
And how do you know? And that's why I say to a lot of brothers, I say, how do you know your value until you've been tested?
Right.
And a lot of us fail to understand that that's the most important time to really show Islam. Do you know what I'm trying to say? In those testing moments. Because if you don't, then you really fail. Because I say to brothers, like, especially young ones, you know, they're feisty, you know, when you're 18, and I was, how dare he look at me like this, and how dare he call raghead, you know? And I say to him, our beloved was in the Kaaba, and his uncle's pouring guts on him, rotten guts, not normal guts, and he completes his prayer. Any Muslim in any mosque would not complete their prayer, completes his prayer, and his daughter at the time curses him, and he reprimands his daughter. I said, that man had control of his emotion, complete, because she cursed him, and he was so upset that she cursed. And it just shows you in the toughest moments, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never left what he stood for.
Yes.
And that's what you're mentioning, because it's kind of like, it's very, everyone that we speak to when they go down the dawah path, be ready for the tests, they say to us. Be ready for those tests.
You got to be ready for those dark moments, because they're gonna come. And, and I think every one of us will or has hit a moment where you say, that's it, I give up. I can't do this anymore. And that's it. Oh Allah, I'm leaving this to you now. Like, you know, like that moment, you know what I mean? I think everyone says that when we get to that situation, it's like so much is hitting you. Like you're bombarded, you know, bullets, grenades, you're copping it everywhere. It's like, Allah, I've done my best. I don't know if I can do any more, but I'm going to live with you now. SubhanAllah.
It's amazing when you said that. It just reminded me of the story of Maryam in the Quran, where there's a time when she's, you know, you think about her story and the way she reacted. And there's a time when she's giving birth and she's like, I wish I were dead.
Allah.
And how many of us have been in that situation? Allah. I can't do this anymore. I wish I were dead. And how Allah responds to her. Like he doesn't say, Amen. Stand up, woman. Stop complaining. Aren't you one of my, you know, servants? The compassion, he says, there's water at your feet and there's dates above your head. Be happy. Like he will provide for you in a way that you don't anticipate. He was always there.
It's my favourite area, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's like we've all had those moments. I can't do this. I can't keep going. I wish I were dead. And Allah's like, I'm here. I'm here. And so we've just got to remind ourselves in those moments, he's there. The nourishment from him is under our feet. It's above our head. It's all around us. And he's saying, be happy. That's how you've got to be in it.
Inshallah.
So on that point, did you have that moment and what was it? now we're digging.
Now you're digging deep, isn't it?
Yeah, I think...
I mean, many of them, but we'd love to share one story, inshallah, too.
I think there was one really difficult moment. My mum passed away at the start of this year. And that was incredibly difficult because she was sick with cancer for a long time. And I was with her when she passed away. And it was a difficult death. And I thought it would be easier. I thought it would be, I've seen deceased bodies before, but I'd never been with someone as they die.
Wow.
And so I guess I had this TV idea about what it would be like, and it was really, really difficult. And it's that moment of, you know, I've given birth twice, so I've been there twice when life has entered the world.
Yeah.
And now I was there when life was exiting as well. And it's very difficult when that's your mother as well. It's that special relationship we have with our mums. And it's always in those moments where it's like, Allah, what's the good in this? Where is that? I trust that there is good in everything, that you put good in everything. And I'm just going to, and sometimes we have to trust Allah more than we can explain him.
Amen.
And so I trust that you are Ar-Rahman. So I know that you are the merciful, even if I don't see it even if I feel like I can't see it at the moment, but I'm going to trust that it's there. And I think it's those difficult moments, that you can have with your family in all these different ways, these difficult challenges where the good isn't immediately evident. There difficult things can happen and we're like, oh, that was hard at the time, but now I see that was really great. Sometimes it can even feel like maybe even in this life I'm not going to see the good of this. But I still have to trust that there will be good in this, and that even when I don't see it, that you are carrying me. And those are the hardest moments, I think, are when I can't reason my way into seeing the immediate good. And that's the test of faith, because it's not always going to be immediate.
No.
And that's Allah. Allah is doing what Allah wants, whether it makes sense to us or not.
We've been in these situations like we had the neighbor from hell.
Okay.
So we had the neighbor from hell for a year.
She was first.
She was our best friend.
But best neighbor first.
Oh.
But things just changed.
We had the best neighbor ever, which is our previous premises that we had. And subhanAllah, she was the best neighbor. She'd come out, have coffee with us every morning.
Best neighbor. She'd call us at 3 o'clock in the morning. Somebody's jumping your fence. That's how
she'd look after the business. And then one day she turned on us.
And her mum passed away, and
she saw us as the enemy.
Yeah.
She's there. That's out of nowhere, like that.
2 years of
but just absolute bombardment. There isn't a complaint that has been made on a business that hasn't been made against us.
WorkSafe, police.
WorkSafe. Oh, there's a 3-phase wire currently sparkling outside their premises. So what happens? WorkSafe comes. Whoa. They're cooking food on the floor. DHS. We're talking about courts.
And
you name it.
And not only that, at our time of our biggest growth in the business, at that time was like, we can't handle this and this.
I was working a minimum 1 to 2 days a week, just combating her.
Wow.
And subhanAllah, thanks to her, we have achieved success. Because without her, we would have never have the capacity or the know-how or even the systemizations to be able
to make sure you're squeaky clean as a business.
So being WorkSafe compliant, being DHS, all the compliance things, she forced us to be the most compliant business ever.
which allowed us to get the contracts at the showgrounds, which allowed us to get the contracts at the My Music Bowl, which we would do.
Right.
So sometimes you don't see the times of fighting, like constant. And I mean, like, we had to put 6 cameras at the front. 6 cameras pointing everything.
And she just changed out of nowhere.
Her mum passed away, and she
Something
looked at us
happened in her brain.
It just happened out of nowhere. And it was like, looking back, I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for her. But at the time, when you're copying the bombardment,
that must have been so weird.
It was.
It was so weird. And like, it's me, Ahmed. Like, remember? It's like,
we were friends.
It's like 1 minute. She just came to the gate.
Restraining orders. We're talking about everything.
No, but she came up to me. She said, "You're the enemy." Exactly. That was her first words. She came up to the gate. I was opening up the gate in the morning. She goes, "Ahmed, you're the enemy." And I said, "Lily, it's Ahmed. I'm your friend." And she goes, "You're the enemy. It's all your fault. It's all your fault." She kept on screaming at me. And it's like,
had something happened politically where she was like, all Muslims are...
nothing. But
nothing at all.
Yeah, but it was after September 11, wasn't it?
No. It was, it was us. We were friends before. No problem. It's just one night. The next morning, she was just a different human being, and we were the enemy, and she blamed us for everything that went wrong.
We took it as the biggest growth. We understand. Behind every challenge is the growth.
Yes.
That's where the real...
Yeah.
And that would be, for us, one of the most challenging times that we had in business, because we had to keep our business on the trajectory of growth, but also
making sure they don't close us down.
And I imagine at the time you're like, "What? Why is this happening? What's the good in this? This is just difficult for no reason."
Like we actually got that bad. You have to understand that. We'd get health department calling. I heard you're doing this. I said, "Yeah, the helicopter's actually landing on my building," and I'll be like, "It got that bad." So then we had to go on the counter. So I'd call council. Oh, look, I've got this property. Oh, we don't take any complaints on that. They hung up on me. It got that bad that even council was spending so much money and time and effort on
I think our investigations alone were over $200,000 against us. Yeah, just the investigations, not including court costs and everything else. Yeah. So just what she complained against us. We're talking about, you name it. Changing conditions of parking, changing conditions of premises. You name it. We
as I said to you, we
learned everything.
We went through thick and thin for business.
Wow. Where is she now?
They ended up moving her because it was a commission house in the front. That council ended up putting pressure on the
to get her out because she was a problem.
Yeah.
But nobody believed that.
But
nobody
they
believed
ended up
that.
putting an alcoholic there that would never come out of the house. So they actually specifically got somebody that wouldn't move out of the house.
Wow.
But we went to court. She put intervention on him. And we went to court, subhanAllah, yeah? And she gets out and she goes, Your Honor, these guys, they let me sleep. They're keeping noises. They had EPA put noise monitors at 2 in the morning to listen to what we're doing in there, even though we're not there.
Yeah.
And then the judge goes, I feel for you. You know, I
live across the
understand.
road
I live
from
across
the
from the school. And it's like there's me and Iba, these wogs standing.
I said, Ahmed and Ibrahim, we're going to get locked up.
But you know what I mean? Dealing with that, we haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Allah, that was the most challenging thing ever.
That's hard. That's hard.
But it is, you know. Exactly. We're saying, Allah, I've done all my best. I haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah, there must be good in this.
Yeah, and you
must
have
be
to
good in
trust it.
And somehow there was, but you can't see it then when you're standing in front of a judge.
Yeah. We're going to jail.
But guess who we had as our character witness? The head of council.
The head of council
The head of council came as our character witness.
Oh, whoa.
Because after he
Because he was
at
an
us,
enemy. He was an enemy, full-on enemy. Like, he raided our warehouse. And he became our
Because he was
friend.
like, these guys are being...
Yeah, like when he saw our character and what we'd done, and how and then like he goes, wow.
He goes, I'm coming in as your character witness. So when we had him there, the judge like, the head of council's here? Okay. He dismissed it.
Yeah, subhanAllah. But it's amazing how many things happen. But
Allah's a bit. Like I said to people, this is the best time to actually show your true character.
It's only when you're being tested. Anyone can be a nice person when things are easy and everyone's being nice to you. That's not a test. It's when things are horrible.
Yeah, you can't, because you can't see that light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. That's the one. You know, when you can't just see that light at the end of the tunnel, you go to yourself, all right, I'm going to walk in the dark.
That's exactly
But a lot of our youth today think the other way. They say, why should I be disrespected? Why should I? They're not looking from a different lens, I've noticed a lot.
Right. And don't you think that is where it shows just how disconnected we've become from the seerah? Like you tell that story of the Prophet ﷺ praying at the Kaaba and having things thrown at him. Like the very online attitude we all have now is, don't tell me what to do. And in fact, I'm going to call you out. And you've done this and that. Could you, but if you have a genuine familiarity with the seerah, that is not the prophetic way. That is not the prophetic way, but I think it shows how disconnected we are, because that is now the norm. That we call out people, which is just that phrasing alone, I think, is deeply problematic, and that everyone has so much righteous, indignant anger. That we're all being affronted instead of working on ourselves. I think one of the biggest tricks that the social media companies or the model has played on us is convincing us that all the work is done online. Look at me posting this because I'm a good person. I'm a righteous, I'm criticizing that person. I'm posting this and I'm a good person. And we're not doing any of the work inwardly and away from the camera. That we're not really focusing on ourselves 10 times more and going, what do I need to do to improve? And how am I disciplining myself? We're also eager to discipline everybody else.
That's amazing.
And that's it couldn't be further from the prophetic model. This is the story you tell is the perfect encapsulation. Not only did he take having the disgusting entrails thrown on him, but then he told off his daughter when she criticized them. He didn't that was.
Yeah, it's amazing. I do that a lot with my managers. Workplaces, they tend to have, head to head. So I bring him in. I'm like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna give 5 nice things about this person, and they very difficult. All right, 5 things he's not doing in the business. 10 things.
Yeah.
And then I go, okay, give me 5 things you're not doing in the business.
Yeah. Exactly.
Me, I'm perfect.
Yes, exactly. So now I give me 10 out of 10.
So then now the other manager's obviously giving me 5 things about that person already. Because, and I said, one of the hardest things is to look internally.
Yeah,
look in the mirror. Look in the mirror and see what...
Because it's uncomfortable. Yes. And this sort of gets back to what we were saying before. We are not willing to sit in discomfort and go, this feels awful and I'm going to sit with this because this is where the growth is.
This is exactly 100%. This is where growth lies, in the discomfort. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, the awful stuff is where the growth... That's why we do Ramadan. Ramadan's hard. That's the point. Getting up for tahajjud, it's hard. That's the point.
Discipline.
So take us further now. Where to from here? What's happening?
That's a really good question. It's funny, when I think about my career, I've never really planned it, which I'm sure businessman like you is a terrible thing to say, that I don't have a 5-year plan, 10-year plan.
If you failed to plan,
I know. You might want to cut this out of the podcast. But I've never had like the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. Maybe because I am curious, I'm always like, what's interesting to me now? What's going on over here? What's happening? This looks interesting, and this opportunity looks interesting, and I think I'll do that. I enjoy being an academic. I really enjoy it. So maybe I'll keep doing that. But I don't know, like I've enrolled in a chocolate making workshop. Maybe I'll become a chocolatier. I don't know. Like I'm just...
Might do a Safi Bros
I mean, if you could give me one of your shop fronts out the front, I'll be a good employee. I promise I won't report you to DHS, whoever it is. But like I think, it's good because I haven't had that really strict 5-year plan. It's meant when different opportunities have come up, I've been like, yeah, sure, why not? Like I don't have a strict plan that I'm following. So like this opportunity to do this or do that or have these different things, which has meant I've sort of been able to broaden my skill set. I mean, there's downsides to it as well, because you can feel a bit directionless, and maybe you're not building things now that you need to so you can be in the right position in 5 years or 10 years. So I do see that. But I am also kind of, I think my natural disposition also is I'm just the kind of person that's pretty happy wherever they are. I'm happy being an academic. If the university burned down tomorrow and I was out of a job, I'd be like, okay, that's the end of that. What's next? Like I'm kind of, wherever I end up, I'll sort of be happy and swimming, because again, I guess it's sort of like gets back to what we were saying earlier, is that what I do is not who I am. I enjoy these things. I enjoy being an academic. I enjoy community work, whatever. Being a mum or wife, all of those things are things that I love, and they make up part of me, but they're not my ultimate identity. And so the rest is sort of the stuff around it. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're sort of giving me, this is somehow because we do mentoring, and some people are extremely focused in planning. So some people are, and some people aren't. So some people are like that ship. They're big ship and they're heading towards there and nothing can move. Yeah. But what you're telling me is you're this little boat that can maneuver around these ships and do whatever it wants and inshallah grab all the opportunities that it comes across.
Maybe, you see an island over there like, what's this island? Let's go over there. And like I said, there would be a lot of benefit and value in having that clear plan and making it get there. You're moving in that direction because it means you're prepared. When you get there, you did all the things here that you needed to. So maybe I should change a bit, but I don't know. I guess it's not my natural state.
Just work with your natural state.
Here's one question for you.
Yeah.
You're part of the Back to the Future days.
Yes.
So if you could hop in that car and go back to a particular time to talk to yourself, what would it be? What would you say?
Back to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Back to young you.
Back to you. What would you say? Keep away from media.
And this guy that you think you don't want to marry. Actually, it's turned out pretty well. That's a great question. Where would I go back to me? It's tricky because I feel like if I go back to any of those moments, like if I went back to me after I just become Muslim and said, I know this is really hard with your family, but things will get better and you won't feel as lonely or whatever. Like I think I needed to not know that, not knowing that and going through that difficult period where I didn't know what was going to happen was actually really important and formative. Yes. You know what I mean? Like if I went back to a different point in my life where a difficult time and to try to reassure myself about, difficult family situations or whatever. If I went back, I'd want to go back, the things I would want to go back to in this point here or that point here and say, things will get better, don't worry. But there is important growth in the not knowing.
Amen.
It's the tawakkul, it's the trusting Allah in those moments, even when I don't know things are going to be okay, that things might actually turn out terribly. And that is still okay. So I worry that if I went back and reassured myself, what would I lose from that, not knowing?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's so true. Yeah. And that movie shows that you can, one thing can change the whole
But on that, someone sent this thing to me the other day and it was so profound. They said, we all think about those movies you go back and one person puts a book in the library and the world changes. And we all accept that. Yeah, we don't want to go back in time because what could happen? We never think about, so what is the one little thing I could do now that could change the course of my future? Me just deciding I'm going to go to the gym from now on 3 times a week. We don't think about this could profoundly change the course of your life. We accept it. In that way, why don't we think about it in this way? The very little things can really make big changes in our lives.
That's
I totally agree.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's all about change. I say it's all about change. Change is the key, and change is uncomfortable for any human and every human being out there. That's why there's change management.
Yeah.
There's change managers. Businesses hire change management experts when they want to change things. We tried to put a new buttering thing in the business. Just a little buttering thing. And subhanAllah, it did not even make it for 3 days because all the staff
They started using
revolted against it. They revolted against it. It's like, it's easier, guys. Look, it's so much easier. No, they revolted against our butter.
They didn't want the change.
No. And that's the thing. And then you got to educate them why and how much is important and what it changes. And
is the butter thing still there or did that go? That's in the scrap heap.
Still, we bought it. We got it from the States. Got 2 of them.
They're not ready for that change. You need to go in and give them some serious coaching.
I should have employed a change management expert for that one.
For the butter machine.
All you can do is do your best and live.
That's it.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair for sharing. I always like to end with an I am statement. An I am statement is an amazing thing. And for example, I would say my I am statement would be I am a student of benefit. For example, that's me. So how would you give yourself an I am statement that we would like to
finish on, inshallah?
It's funny, as soon as you said that, the thing that came to me, I think, may not be the kind of thing you're looking for because it's not like I really like yours. I wish I thought of that. But what first came to me is the thing that came up instinctively within me was I am trying. Like that's what it is. I'm trying. And the nice thing about trying is that it doesn't contain within it that you will be successful, that you could fail a million times, but that you just keep going, that you're going to keep trying at all these things. And I guess, that's all any of us can do in this life. But I feel like I will keep trying. And when I stop trying, that's when I know there's a problem. That when I'm like, I'm just going to coast. That's a problem.
Not knowing much about you before this podcast, I totally testify that.
Yeah.
You definitely are always trying. Allah bless your family and yourself for your hard work in the community.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Jazakallah. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for trusting us.
Trusting us.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Wa alaikum salam wa barakatuh.